It's officially 3 days to Christmas. I mean, 1, 2, 3. All my counting down paid off. Good morning and welcome. I'm Kayode Okikulu.
Now, is it beginning to feel like Christmas?
Yep.
Well, it already felt like Christmas for me. It didn't matter the feeling in the external. Welcome to your perfect morning starter on Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka.
And I'm Jeffrey Osun. Christmas is just 2 days away. I don't know why the radios are not playing as much of Christmas songs as they should play. But if you're feeling it, good. If you're not, it doesn't matter. The most important thing, just enjoy the season and understand the reason for the season. I think that's the most important thing. But for me, guys, good news for what has played out in Niger State. Papari children and their teachers have finally been released. And although that number issue is still somewhere around my head as to what exactly are the... Because when we had the conversation, I think with the CAN people here, they gave us an estimated 165 remaining. And from what I understand, I think we have about 115 also that were released. So we hope by the end of the day, the government and the authorities will be able to clarify as to what the real numbers are, or whether there were discrepancies. And if there were discrepancies, we need to be very clear. How many children were actually abducted? We know how many were released. So nice to reconcile the numbers. Is it 115 that were left to be released, or 165 that were left to be released? But the most important thing is that they are back. I think that's the most important thing. And the messaging is, let this never happen again.
Yeah, we're right on the money, Jeffrey. We had a conversation, although the network was not quite, ideal for that critical conversation about 2 weeks ago, during which Mr. Tori told us that a total of 315 children, including their teachers, were abducted. And we had initially 100 released, 50 escaped, according to the Catholic Diocese in Kontentious in Niger State, and then 100 were released. And so Mr. Tori told us 165 was actually the number that was outstanding, including the teachers. So if we now have reports indicating that all the children and teachers have been released, then we can rest easy knowing that there's no one from St. Mary's Catholic School, Niger State, that is still in the captivity of the kidnappers. But of course, the reports indicate, even from the Catholic Diocese, that the number of release is not quite clear. But guys, what is still unsettling is the release without corresponding kidnap. No one was kidnapped. Without corresponding arrest. Thank you, Kayode. No one was arrested. So what are the details of this release? How should we be processing this release? How should the people of St. Mary's Catholic School, and indeed the entire Niger State, be processing it within the context of their own safety in the future? That is just as important as the good news that has greeted us over the weekend, and which we're starting with this morning. What is the state of security in Niger State, and indeed in other parts of the country?
And that's a big question. Yes, we're starting off the week on a cheery note. Still unclear about the figures, but we must report that those students have been released. It is not clear, the number, and we must say that it's exactly 1 month since they were kidnapped on November the 21st, released yesterday, December the 21st. Just imagine what they went through. 4 weeks in kidnappers' den, out of the protection of their homes or out of the protection of their parents. They obviously do not have any semblance of good welfare. And you imagine the psychological effect on those children. And while we celebrate and wait for more clarity from the government of Niger State, we must reiterate that there are others who are still in captivity. In Kogi, for example, the Ekwa Church, a video resurfaced showing the worshippers, old and young, begging for their lives. So while we celebrate this one and we ask for arrests, prosecution to serve as a deterrent, because the president had said during the APC meeting that, they've expanded the list of those who are now to be treated as terrorists. So we need to see that treatment in action, and we need to also see the release of others who have been kidnapped. Enough is enough of people spending 1 day, 2 days, 2 weeks, 1 month in captivity. Enough is enough. That should be our New Year resolution as a nation. But we want to thank the security agencies for securing their release, and we ask that they must do more to ensure proper prosecution and arrests of these terrorists. Whew. So there you go.
So speaking of thanking the security agencies, we should also be thanking the security agencies for the successes recorded over the weekend. Reports coming through indicate that troops have neutralized about 17 terrorists in Borno State. They successfully disrupted terrorist logistics operation and neutralized multiple insurgents during what is reported to be a well-coordinated long-range ambush as part of current operations conducted in the early hours of December the 21st, 2025. Reports indicate that they were acting on credible intelligence from sources regarding the movement of logistics supplies by suspected ISWAP elements, and they were supported, of course, by local hunters deployed to a designated interception point between Sojiri and Kayama villages in Borno. And this also, amplifies the importance of working with the locals in securing communities, especially in the rural areas. And that's why, the conversation often also resurfaces about the need to empower local governments, because security begins at the grassroots. And so this intelligence operation has also been supplied, according to this report, by local hunters, helping, to carry out this ambush that has neutralized this, terrorist. And we hope for more reports like that in the coming days, such that people can have a stronger sense of safety in their localities. Guys.
Well said. And beyond all of that, just to remind you and everyone that the AFCON has started. It started off yesterday, the Africa Cup of Nations. I saw what may be contested to be one of the goals of the season being scored by Morocco against Comoros yesterday. That was the second goal. Nigeria plays, I think, the day after. Is it tomorrow? Tomorrow Nigeria is going to be on the field. So we're going to be here cheering for the Super Eagles of Nigeria. Since we couldn't make it to the Americas,
yet.
Anyway,
that window is still slightly.
I'm hopeful.
It's still slightly.
Whatever happens, whether I want to go there by whatever means necessary.
Back window, you mean?
Just leave us like that.
Whatever means necessary to help us go to America, we'll be very glad. But for now, what we have in hand is what is playing out in Morocco, and so we'll be cheering for the Super Eagles of Nigeria. So, as you're celebrating Christmas, as you're doing everything you want to do, please make sure you support our Super Eagles. I was even making a joke the other day. I said, look, it looks like sometimes even when these games are on, even the terrorists sometimes just had to pipe down just to watch the games. But that was just a joke. But we need to support our Super Eagles. We couldn't make it to the World Cup. We hope we can use the back door, as Kayode said, to make it to that World Cup. But whatever happens, support the Super Eagles of Nigeria. Let's see how far we can go with that. This time, we'll leave the trophy or not. But hey, we will be bringing you up to speed. What are we doing today? First up, the tax reform will be taking effect on January the 1st, 2026. But will it? That is the big question. And the issues around this has to do with what was raised on the floor of the House of Representatives as to either expunging, modification, or some sort of, some clarity that is required between what was passed and what was gazetted. We'll bring that clarity today on the program with the man in charge.
Of course, the dust is yet to settle on the candidacy of the Osun State Governor, Demola Nuruddin Jackson Adeleke, a very unbeloved dancing governor. As a group, if you like, a faction of the Accord Party is raising issues with the process by which he emerged as the candidate of the party, and letting the public know that his candidacy may be in a subject of court litigation. So we're looking to hearing their own side to the story and see how this unfolds in the coming days. So we'll be having that conversation with a disputed chairman. Well, they wouldn't like that. Politicians wouldn't like that. Of the Accord Party. Is everything going accordingly with the Accord Party?
Is there a dispute? Yes, it is what it is. If you don't want us to use those terms, then put your house in order. But that's not all we're speaking to on the program today. The debate is growing about a tinted glass permit. The police said, well, we are starting off. In fact, lawyers in the Delta Court have asked that they commit the IGP and all for disobeying court orders. So yet again, we visit this hot matter and seek to get some headway. Plus, contentious issue of land, which we started the discussion last week. The Enugu State government's representative will be speaking to that contested land in the nation's capital, Abuja.
So that is the outlook of the program today, as we try to make you have a wonderful time, watching on this very first day of the week as we approach the peak of the Yuletide. We'll take a break, and when we come back after this break, we'll be bringing in Mr. Dayak, who is a public affairs analyst, to help us break down what the dailies are leading with in just a moment. Stay with us. Okay, Mr. Akitobi, thank you so much for coming on the program. Let's get started with the Vanguard. How is it going?
Going well. It's Yuletide season. It's a time when we at least put our woes or our worries aside and revel in the euphoria of the moment. So compliments of the season to all Nigerians, and maybe a very merry, safe, peaceful, and joyous Yuletide season for everyone.
Fantastic. Let's get to the headlines from the dailies. Vanguard is where we starting off from. Why presidency raised 2026 budget to 58 trillion naira, works on details as Nigerians await breakdown. So usually when this budget is presented in the executive summary to the joint session of the National Assembly, we'll get to see better detail when the Ministry of Budget and National Planning and other ministries in charge, and finance as well, help us to understand the rationale behind this number. I think this is about $40 billion in our total spending limit for 2026. And the president has actually promised that no more multiplicity or overlaps as far as the budgets are concerned. What do you make of this?
There will always be overlaps for as long as our expenditure exceeds our revenue. That's the bottom line. But yeah, when you see the initial estimates that are provided, each MDA is supposed to present its own budget individually, which are then now consolidated into the master national budget. So remember, a budget is an estimate at the end of the day. It's not really finite in terms of the figures. So it will continue to change. Normally, the argument or the fufaro is about the National Assembly padding the budget because they are always adding constituency projects and things that were not captured when the executive put the budget together. But in this case now, it's the presidency that has raised the 2026 budget. And, well, first of all, there are issues. They are still part of the 2024 budget that are still being implemented. There's part of the 2025 that's going to be carried over to 2026. The president addressed all those issues in his budget speech, and he seemed pretty decisive and firm about the fact that multiplicity of budgets is a thing of the past, and that there will be a very strong focus on implementation. Well, we can only hope. Talk is cheap, but he seemed resolute in the fact that they will be scrupulous in seeking to implement the numbers they have put together at this point in time. But look, at the end of the day, it all still depends on certain things that are beyond our control. Global price of oil, for example. I noticed one of the things he said was that they have lowered their assumptions, the optimism. So dollar exchange rate, they've reduced it. Price per barrel of oil, they've brought it down. How many barrels of oil we will pump, they've tried to be more realistic. But many of these things are not in direct control of the government. I mean, what impetus do we have on the global price of oil individually? Can we actually move that price on our own? We can't. So these assumptions are just a yardstick. They are not finite, and they are not by any means accurate or specific. They are just estimates. So that number will continue to change as market realities change. So find to have raised it to 58 trillion. Perhaps there are more assumptions that have been adjusted. Perhaps more MDAs have submitted their own individual budgets. But at the end of the day, let us take some hope and some succor from the president's speech. We haven't seen the details, the breakdown of the budget. I think we've seen sectoral, we've seen the total, and we've also seen sectoral allocations in terms of percentages. Of course, security took the bulk, which we expected and which has been the trend for the last couple of years. The quantum, the sum of money actually thrown at security has increased by quite a bit. And so we see that the president is serious about this fight against terrorism, banditry. He gave marching orders and said basically anybody who is involved in any sort of violence will be branded a terrorist and they'll be dealt with summarily. So I get a lot of pleasure from some of the titles given to some of these budgets. I don't know if you remember a governor of ours a couple of years ago who used to have these fantastic terminologies in terms of the titles of his budget. This one that the president has given us, well, we hope and wish that it comes to pass and has the effect. You can give it all the fancy titles you want, but if it's not implemented, it can't bring prosperity. If it's not implemented fully, it can't bring prosperity, it can't bring peace, it can't bring improvement in the quality of life of the ordinary Nigerian. So implementation is key. It's one thing to put the figures together, it's another thing to find a way to fund it, which is why, of course, you see debt service is a very big part of the component of this new budget, because we've been borrowing in the past to make up the deficits. We have to pay that money back. So it's interesting. We'll get to see. I am going into 2026 optimistic. I'm highly optimistic about the economy. I'm highly optimistic about governance. I'm highly optimistic about the quality of life of Nigerians. I'm highly optimistic about insecurity, that many of the things that have bedeviled us in 2025 will begin to see improvement in the new year. So let's go into 2026 hopeful. As individual citizens, let's contribute our own quota in our own little spaces, the little bit that we can do to assist government. Government can't do it all. We have a role to play as individuals as well.
Well, Mr. Akitobe, what can we do without optimism? It is the very next thread to the next breath. And but you know, you're drawing our attention to the title of the budget reminds me of what the PDP used to describe the president's 2026 budget, something tantamount to renewed shaggy. You know, there is an item called renewed resilience in the budget, as titled by Mr. President, Budget of Consolidation, Renewed Resilience, and Shared Prosperity. We just hope that that renewed resilience is not tantamount to more suffering, as the PDP has described it. But let's head to this Nigeria, and this Nigeria captures the experience of Nigerians currently as they begin to go home, travel home en masse to celebrate the Yuletide. Nigerians in Yuletide travel dilemma. Abuja to Lagos, eastbound road trips now almost 100,000 naira. Travelers trapped between costly flights, risky roads. FCCPC cracks down on unjustified fare hikes. And we did hear the FCCPC say over the weekend that indeed in this economy, increases may be legal, but it is charged with the responsibility of protecting Nigerians in terms of pricing. But Mr. Akitobe, one thing that is interesting is that a number of interstate buses and in fact local transport buses have transited to CNG, and even the e-hailing apps and cabs, as the case may be. But this has not amounted to reduction in the cost of transportation. Does this unsettle you as it does other Nigerians who inevitably have to travel?
Well, the CNG infrastructure is not fully fleshed out yet, so we can't begin to see economies of scale kick in yet, because the places where you can fill CNG into your vehicle, they're still far and few between, so the cost will be high. The logistical import, as well as the movement to go and get it, and the fact that it's not readily around every corner makes it a bit complicated. But I think that part of the problem has to do with this insecurity issue that has made traveling by road very, very risky. Even the luxurious buses, the overnight buses, many of them now resort to engaging armed mobile police to accompany the vehicles. There is a cost attached to that that's going to be passed on to the traveler. Then, by the time you go from Lagos either to the southeast or from Lagos to Abuja, you can't begin. It boggles the mind to know how many checkpoints you will pass through. And at each of the checkpoints, from what we understand, there is some sort of an exchange between the driver and the security personnel to allow them easy passage or lack of delay, or their vehicles being stopped for unnecessary searches and things like that. So all these things add to the cost, add to the time. The time it takes you to travel also has a factor on your economic well-being. And then the airlines, of course, it's never been cheap per se to travel by air. But now the costs have skyrocketed as well, even though aviation fuel is available. So locally, because of the Dangote refinery. So it's the same thing about the CNG as well as it is about aviation. You would expect that now that we have the consumables available locally, prices should reduce. Those kind of things take time. Right. Even Dangote that announced a reduction last week and said $6.99 at the gantry and no more than $7.39 at the pump. Even the MRS stations that he supplied, they've not all yet adjusted to the new price, because they'll say they have old stock, they're not going to sell it at a loss.
That's just
so. Yeah, they won't want to sell it at a loss, so they will liquidate the old stock before they begin to bring in the new stock that they can sell at a reduced price. So it's unfortunate, but this Yuletide season, there's no escaping the fact that everything is going to cost an arm and a leg more. It's not just transportation, food in the market, Christmas shopping, gifts, electricity, fuel, all of the things that are going to make for a joyful Yuletide, we will have to pay a little bit more. But I think it's a short-term pain. As Bukola mentioned, Shege, if we're going through Shege now, we want to believe that Shege will continue to reduce as the days go by. So let's accept it as part of the sacrifices we have to make at this time, right, and that it is a short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain. We shouldn't have to compromise our Yuletide. This is the one festive season where, as Nigerians, we all come together, we share love, share harmony, we felicitate together, we party together, we put aside our woes for a minute. So we shouldn't allow economic challenges to inhibit the one time of the year when we forget about religion, forget about ethnicity. We are all brothers and sisters, and we all party together. So we will get through it, and whatever government's role needs to be played, okay, so give us more CNG terminals where more of the e-hailing and more of the luxury buses can fill up their tanks easier and more cost effectively. Likewise, aviation. If you're getting aviation fuel from Dangote refinery, we would assume that the cost will be less because there's no transportation involved from importing it from overseas. So, but you got to understand that the airlines and the luxurious bus companies, they are businesses. They borrowed money, they invested money, they're looking at their bottom line. They have to turn a profit to be able to pay back their loans, satisfy their shareholders. Indeed. If the cost of doing business does not enable them to turn a profit, they will close down, and Nigerians will be all worse for it. So let's not too much demonize the business people. Let's not demonize them, because it's not always their fault.
Mr.
Not all of them are totally all about profiteering.
There's another business ongoing with the Dirty December, with those returning home saying, what exactly is going on with the prices? An apartment that used to cost maybe 350, 400,000 to stay, they're saying 1 million, 1 point something. And I'm thinking, okay, you don't want us to return with any money in our pocket, but let's go over to the Abuja Inquirer this month. That's the Inquirer leading with the release of the 130 Niger pupils and teachers. But you see the explainers under says no word on Kogi churchgoers. And we also reiterated that earlier on the program, the ECWA members, both old and young, who were kidnapped. That very sad video emerged over the weekend showing them begging for their lives. It was very traumatic to watch. And did you imagine what they are going through? Those who are right there in the kidnappers' den, the Cherubim and Seraphim Church as well. So as much as we celebrate this win, there are also other ongoing operations that we must bring closure to. There's also the other one, security fears deepen at Yuletide. DHQ deploys special forces air support against attacks. So it's sort of a mixed bag, Mr. Akintobi. And we've also always said this, that while we speak about the release, we're always silent about the terrorists themselves. What happened? Did they slip off and we just rescued those abducted, or did they disappear? Were they arrested? Were they neutralized? Do you think this is maybe part of a strategy, or just clear not being forthright?
There's one you didn't mention. I don't know if you're being diplomatic here. You didn't talk about, was ransom paid. You didn't mention that.
There you go. That's number one on the list. Skipped my mind.
Exactly.
I think it's the elephant in the room.
Yes, but you see, there's two sides to the equation. While we are celebrating the release and we're happy, it's the best Christmas gift we could ask for, there's a second half of the equation which has to do with responsibility, which has to do with prosecution, interdiction, conviction, punishment. I continue to say that there is no deterrent factor in just getting kidnapped victims back. It doesn't discourage the practice. Yes, while we're happy that our people have been released and they're back home, we haven't done anything to discourage this kind of things from happening again in the future. So questions still need to be asked, and we are unhappy about the fact that the CNC people in Kogi are still in captivity. But it's not just them, there are other people. While we celebrate some gains, for example, the 130 Niger pupils and teachers, there are still others that we must not forget that are still in captivity up to tomorrow. Going back several years, I mean, Leah Sharibu, for example, many. We can go back and talk about that are still in captivity, that we still need to continue to strive to get their release. And one of the ways to do that, I would say, is well, they say you don't negotiate with terrorists. I heard Sheikh Gumi a few days ago saying we fought this war in a kinetic fashion for the last 15 years and we've not won it. So we should begin to start looking at other methods. He's advocating negotiation with the bandits. I've never known anywhere where negotiation with a blackmailer, a terrorist, or whatever has ever worked. I have always been of the school of thought that the only way you arrest this thing is to take a no-nonsense approach from a security standpoint to going guns blazing, I guess you would say. But look, we must never forget the fact that we are in a war situation against this terrorism, and Nigerians are the collateral damage. It's come to the point now where the terrorists are even using their kidnapped victims as human shields. This part of the challenges the military faces when you say, why don't you just go and bomb Sambisa Forest? Yeah, so they stay up there and they drop bombs. How about the innocent victims that are being held by the terrorists? What's going to happen to them if you carpet bomb Sambisa Forest? So these are some of the things that the military has to grapple with. It's not a straightforward, face me, I face you, shoot me, I shoot you, mano a mano war like conventional warfare used to be. This is a different type of warfare that will be won through intelligence, technology, information sharing, and you know, it's a digital war we're in now. It's no longer the conventional way we used to fight battles. So it requires a different type of strategy completely. You know, at this time of the year, we are worrying about insecurity. There are people who have refused to come home from the diaspora just because they worry about being kidnapped. That has an effect on our economy because the money they will bring to spend is not coming. Likewise, there are people who won't go to the village, who are based in the cities, who won't go to the village because of fear of security. That also has an effect on the local economy. So we want to continue to encourage our military. Like I said in the last time I was on, the president has taken some bold steps recently, including the appointment of the new Minister of Defense, reshuffling the service chiefs. He's made a deal with Italy for some aircraft, for some fighter jets. There are steps that are being taken. Plus, if you listen to his speech at the budget presentation, you know that he himself, his back is against the wall. He's had enough, and he doesn't want this to continue, and he will do whatever it takes to get it to stop.
Secondly, well said. Thank you so much for always bringing your expertise to bear whenever we bring you on to analyze the front pages of the Daily. We hope, as you said, these killings will stop and these mass abductions will never happen again. But I must thank you, Mr. Dayakintobi, for coming on the program. We appreciate you.
My pleasure always. Merry Christmas, Nigeria.
And we understand that somewhere around Kara Bridge, outbound Lagos, there is a body there that has been there for some days now. We understand since Friday. I want to call on the attention of the government. We don't know what is behind, what happened to the person, but there's a body that has been laying lifeless on Kara Bridge, outbound Lagos. So the authorities, whether it's Ogun State or Lagos State government, please, let's see what we can do to take out that body before it decomposes even further, and for environmental reasons, and so that people are not traumatized. But let's reiterate, outbound Lagos on Kara Bridge, there's a body that has been lying lifeless since Friday. This is calling on the attention of the government to do something as quickly as possible. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about tax. Taiwo Oyedele, the chairman of that committee, fiscal reform and tax reforms, will be joining us in just a moment. Stay with us.
Yes, security may be the biggest talking point in Nigeria, but if you were to check that list, top 5 would be the tax reforms set to kick off on January the 1st, 2026. But just some days ago, a lawmaker on the floor of the House of Representatives raised concerns, and he alleged that what they passed in the National Assembly is different from what the president signed and gazetted, and that is a major talking point in Nigeria today. Some are saying, is this budget padding, except that it's not a budget, it's the tax law? How do we describe it? What exactly is going on? Well, there's an investigation ongoing right now, but we have to touch base with one of the brilliant minds who has championed this year in, year out, even from before he got the position. We have joining us on the program the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, joins us virtually on the program today. Mr. Oyedele, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Kayode.
Well, Mr. Oyedele, I'm sure you've seen that video by Honorable Abdulsamad Dasuki, PDP Sokoto, where he raised the matter of privilege on the floor of the House, alleging discrepancies between the tax laws passed by the National Assembly and the version subsequently gazetted and made available to the public. But before we get right into it, I wanted you to help us understand the role you played, just to reiterate yet again, because lawmaking is like factory work. There are those who get the raw materials, there are those who operate the machine, there are those who mix the product together, there are those who certify to be sure that, oh, this product is fit, there are those who package it, and then we talk about marketing. So in this whole chain, what was your role? Let's contextualize it, then we'll get into the controversies.
Thank you very much, Kayode. So you're right. I think when it comes to matters of legislation, particularly tax matters, trust is very important. Because taxation in particular is at the heart of the social contract between the people and the government. But to answer your question directly, my role is the privilege to lead a team of very patriotic Nigerians from all walks of life. I've said this a number of times. At a point, we were more than 100. In trying to look at our tax system to see what's wrong with it, and that's a lot of things are wrong, and then to see how do we address those issues with one objective, to make Nigeria better for everyone. So while I'll be the one, speaking for the committee, this is a teamwork that we have been doing for the past 2.5 years. And I'm really proud of the team and their commitment. Now, what role have we played? So we were the team that drafted the bills. And while we're drafting the bills, we created this very rigorous process with the understanding that we've seen instances in Nigeria where there are different versions of a bill. But I remember when they were doing the petroleum industry bill before it was enacted, there was a lawmaker who said, we're not even sure which version we're discussing. We had this very rigorous process to guarantee the integrity of that bill. Of course, went through the internal processes. Mr. President presented it to the National Assembly. And from that point forward, our role was really more about just trying to explain the thinking behind those different provisions in the law, which many people followed. Now, once that was done, bear in mind as well that the legislative process is quite rigorous and elaborate. So there was the House Committee on Finance that did their work. There was the Senate Committee on Finance that did their work. And where necessary, they asked us for explanation of what they were doing, and then they passed their own versions. Now, because those two versions were not the same, they had to harmonize. And once they harmonized and sent it to Mr. President, my role in particular was about looking at what they've asked Mr. President to sign and identify whether there are major or substantial changes to the policy issues. You want to do tax harmonization, you want to reduce the taxes on businesses, you want to eliminate tax on low-income earners. Those policy issues, all right, were the areas of my focus, such that you want to get to a point where you're saying to yourself, has anything in terms of the policy direction been substantially altered as to warrant the president withholding assent? Now, after that was done, and the law was being gazetted, and I use the word advisedly, being gazetted, we were still very interested in ensuring that the editing issues, referencing, numbering, definitional problems were properly done. And many people will be aware who are watching us that there was a first draft, let me call it first draft of the Gazette that actually went out. Somebody released it when they were not authorized, where we saw some mistakes. And we escalated those mistakes, and many of those corrections were indeed made before we now have what is the final Gazette of the tax law. So essentially, in a nutshell, that is the role that I have played along with my committee members.
All right, so Mr. Oyedele, let's get right into it. The particular sections in the law that are being said to be changed or have been changed, we want to look at them and want to ask you, is this what was passed? We'll start with the Niger Revenue Service Act, Section 25 on accounts and audit. It says the service shall keep proper accounts and records, and such accounts shall not later than 6 months after the end of each year be audited by auditors appointed by the board from the list and in accordance with the guidelines supplied by the Auditor General of the Federation. Now, that's what is in the gazetted law. That's the Niger Revenue Service Act. Also, 26 is also in contention. This is gazetted, Mr. Oyedele. Is this what was passed?
Yeah, let me help to make some very important clarifications. So generally, before you can say that there's a difference between what was gazetted and what was passed. We have what is gazetted. We don't have what was passed. So the official harmonized bills certified by the clerk, which the National Assembly sent to the president, we don't have the copy to compare, right? That's a fundamental issue that people need to be aware of. So only the lawmakers can say authoritatively, this is what we sent. And that what we sent, it shouldn't be the House of Rep version. It shouldn't be the Senate version. It should be the harmonized version certified by the clerk. So even me, I can't say that I have it, right? Because I don't. I only just have what was presented to Mr. President to sign. The second important point, which will help our audience, is that what has been circulating and also widely reported by a lot of media organizations is actually, fake. So when I saw those things, you would imagine someone like me would take very keen interest, in something like that. So I reached out to one of the members of the committee that the House of Reps set up, and I said, these are some of the allegations. Let me even tell you the reason why I reached out. There's a reference in one of those materials to one section 41 subsection 8 that says you have to pay a deposit of 20%. And I know that particular provision is not in the final gazette, but it was in the draft gazette. So I reached out and the lawmaker said that they haven't even met. So some people decided they should write the report of the committee before the committee has met, and it has circulated everywhere. So I don't know whether it's useful, because to be honest, I don't want to speculate. What is out there in the media did not come from the committee set up by the House of Reps, and I think we should allow them do the investigation, because ultimately, I think this is not just about the tax reform laws. It's about our processes. How can we make those processes have those quality assurance? Almost like, a system that is so tamper-proof, like the way you print your currency or the way you print the ballot box, ballot papers. That's the way we should take legislation. It matters a lot. I was speaking to a senior advocate who said to me that they went to court and tried to defend their client on something constitutional. So they were reading the Constitution and they just say, but there is this section you are reading, it's not the same as what another person has. Even the Constitution people print different versions. We saw it with PIA. We saw it with even KAMA. So I think I'll leave it at that point. Let's wait for the findings of the lawmakers, if indeed there were alterations, and if those alterations were substantial, in other words, they're not editorial, then the next step will be to see how best to address those issues.
So let's get to try to understand Honorable Abdulsamad Dasuki's position within the context of the inner workings of administrative processes of government. And when I say government now, the legislative and the executive arms of government. I'm drawing attention to this, with reference to the signing of the bill into law by Mr. President, which was under the watchful eyes of, I believe, the Senate President and other officials of the National Assembly. So, and I believe you were also there, because it was, the story made headlines when the bill was signed into law. So what could have led to the alleged discrepancies? Because what the implications of what Honorable Dasuki is saying are quite huge. They are not administrative errors, going by what Kayode has read out from the law that was signed, but have huge implications if indeed there are discrepancies. So who should we be calling out with respect to the administrative processes between the legislative and the executive arms of government over this reported discrepancy?
Yeah, thank you, Bukola. I'll be very honest with you. I do not think that this is a legislative versus executive conversation. I do not think that's what it is. I think it's a process and a system issue that has to be addressed. And I don't think it's about finger pointing and looking for who to blame. Like what I said is, if you think about the process today, there's a lot of stages with manual hands-offs, that anything can go wrong. So when you sit to discuss changes to the law as lawmakers, there's someone who is making notes who needs to go and update. You need to ensure that they're updating what they have been asked to. You finish that with House of Rep, you do almost the same thing for Senate, and then you harmonize, and then you also need people to update. And then you certify it, you send it, usually through the Ministry of Justice to go to Mr. President for assent. And once it's been signed, you will notice that the version that the President signs is a different format. You have to then put it in their gazetting format, which is also done, manually. And then that sending from the President after assent for gazetting goes to Ministry of Information. Now, these different stages do not have the level of quality assurance that can make sure that these things never happen, not only for the tax bills, but for going forward. So which is why my preference is maybe we shouldn't waste this crisis, if you call it a crisis, and use it as an opportunity not only to identify if anything had gone wrong in this case that is substantial, address them, but more importantly, to strengthen that process going forward, so that when we have laws, we know that these laws have not been tampered with in any way, form, or shape. And by the way, you said when the laws were being signed, and I've heard this also, the Senate President was there, the Speaker was there, but if you are there when they're signing the law, you can't read 400 pages just because you're there. There's a process for finding out, the content of that. So I wouldn't say just the fact that the lawmakers were there and I was there meant that everybody confirmed that everything was fine. The same way I wouldn't say that, it wasn't fine, which is why I said let's wait for the outcome of the investigation.
The argument is to whether there were modifications, removals, omissions in the Gazetted, as you've explained from your position as to what you think it is and how we must seize this opportunity. Because we know that legislative powers resides purely with the National Assembly according to Section 4 and Section 58 of the Constitution. So except there are clerical errors and all of that, which are even has to go through the National Assembly. Now, there are people that are calling, without going to some specifics, there are people that are calling for a suspension of implementation to avoid a bit of chaos on January the 1st. Is that a valid call from where you sit?
Yeah, so I think, I'll also tell you that even before this alleged alteration issue came up, there are people who have been calling for suspension. There are people who have been saying no to the reform, we cannot do it for whatever reasons. The biggest issue we've had to deal with and that we're still dealing with has been misinformation. Now, if you speak to the legal provisions and who has the powers, even if we want to postpone the implementation of the law, it has to be the lawmakers. That's far beyond my pay grade. So that decision has to be made, and I believe that decision for them will be a function of what their findings from this investigation reveal. But just to put it very clearly to the Nigerian people, what some people have done is to have recruited unsuspecting Nigerians to fight the reform that is meant to benefit the generality of the people, and by creating fear. So what is the cost of delay? What is the cost of not going ahead 1st of January? What is the cost of suspending it or not going ahead with the reform? It will mean simply that we continue with the status quo, which is that the bottom 98% of workers remain overtaxed. Small businesses miss out on exemptions, so they continue to pay multiple taxes and high tax burden. Large firms continue with their multiple and nuisance taxes. Right? Minimum taxes continue to apply on low-income earners and small businesses and on profitable businesses. Hidden VAT continue to make the prices of basic consumption like food, healthcare, and education to go up. And then the wasteful, distortionary incentive that we have that is distorting the economy will continue. So we need to be clear about what we're asking for. That's why I keep saying that even if it's established that there have been substantial alterations to what the National Assembly passed, my view would be identify those provisions And those provisions, of course, mean they're not part of the law. So you then go ahead and implement the law as passed by the National Assembly while you address those issues as to how did they get in there and what should we do. I'll say to you, even just looking at the things that were passed by the National Assembly, the areas where even my committee, we've noted areas where we need to go back, of course, through Mr. President, to request for amendment to those laws, because there were issues to do with referencing, issues of definition. You may be aware, like small business, for example, is defined in two of the new laws, and the definition is different. So like if you are defining a small business, why don't you just define it in one way so people are not confused? So those issues already require some intervention from the lawmakers. And for us, we'll be taking advantage of this process, depending on what the lawmakers decide, to then make those corrections.
Right. So it's quite intriguing to see the developments from the very beginning, issues around VAT, around derivation and all of that. This has been one exhausting procedure, really. So I see a lot of businesses that are already marking up for next year's budgeting. So when they say, okay, do a budget for this for next year, they add to it because there's a lot of uncertainty for them. A lot of people think it's going to be some sort of an Armageddon. So they are preparing for the worst, marking up just to sort of have a buffer in case things go awry. Maybe you also want to speak to those businesses. I mean, we're following the outcome of this investigation, but there are a lot of people, as I said, who are already marking up because they're thinking, we don't know what will happen if we're already charging VAT, consumption tax already 15%. Some are even adding to it, thinking, we might even need to do 20% next year. I want you to speak to that as well, because I see it as a trend. And if you've seen budgets for next year, Mr. Oyedele, it's almost unholy at this point.
Very important question, Kayode. And I see this a lot. And sometimes for me, it's just so heartbreaking. You know, one of my friends, you know, who is a director at the NESD, you know, called me, I think it was last weekend or maybe 2 weeks ago. He wanted to make a dress and went to the tailor. And the tailor gave a price that he considered was too high. So he just concluded it must be to do with year-end and Christmas. You have too many demands. You don't have time for me. And he said to the tailor, I'll wait because I'm not pressed for time. I'll come back in January and make my dress when the price will be reasonable. Guess what the tailor said? He said, don't wait till January because the price will go up even further. And he said, why? He said tax reform. So the next question was, which part of the tax reform? Of course, the tailor has no idea. But in his mind, he's been sold this narrative that this tax reform will make things go up, and he's already planning to add price to what he's doing. This is so dangerous and unfair to the system. This tax reform law has been designed to bring down costs for businesses. Businesses will be getting input credit for VAT on their assets, on their overhead that they never got before. This is worth 3.4 trillion naira, just based on 2024 tax collection. Large businesses will see a drop in their corporate tax rate from 30% to 25%. 98% of workers in the private and public sector combined would either no longer pay PAYE or they will pay less than they were paying before. Small businesses, up to 100 million turnover a year, will not pay corporate tax, no VAT, no withholding tax. The narrative we should be saying is that we expect prices to come down, not to give people the excuse to raise prices. I don't know how else we can convince ourselves that what we are doing now, many of us, is not helping us. We pray for a better society. We want a country that can at least take care of all of us. And then when we have reforms to do exactly that, we spin it and change it to a negative reform such that people are now even afraid of it. You know, interestingly, some of the things they've used to sell the misinformation and create fear and panic are in the current tax laws in a worse form. The current tax law requires you to provide tax ID. It gives the taxman the power to collect information from your bank. It has multiple taxation for individuals. So all the things that people are afraid of are in worse form in the current law. Many of those taxes have been removed under the new one. There's no consumption tax of 15 or 20% because they're being harmonized. Let me even give you another good news. Part of what we did to address multiple taxation, many people remember subsidy is gone as day one speech of Mr. President. That same day, he addressed the issue of multiple taxation and says we must fix the problem. In this new tax law, many of those multiple taxations have been eliminated to the extent that they are not conflicting with the Constitution. We've also written to the National Assembly proposals to address where we have nuisance taxes in the Constitution, and that is making good progress, and we are grateful to the lawmakers. The third aspect of it is subnational. So we have state now, we work with Joint Revenue Board, and drafted a tax harmonization law for the state to enact for themselves and their local government. Good news, as I speak to you now, Ekiti State, Anambra State, Zamfara State, and Kano State have passed those laws. They're just waiting to sign. Imagine that we get to a point where all the states have enacted laws to harmonize all this multiple taxation, outlaw cash collection, so that you also block the leakages. It's a win-win for the system, and we should not stall that process for any reason.
Help us understand also the concerns over increase in personal income tax for, of course, for those who earn above 1 million naira as contained in the new tax laws. What implications will that have on the what we call now the middle class that is gradually being eliminated?
Yeah, Bukola, let me just tell you, this is also one of the biggest misinformation. If anybody is earning, 2 million naira or less a month, this new tax law from next year eliminates either their PAYE completely for the lowest income earners, or it reduces what they earn. So I'm talking about like 20 million naira a year, we'll see a drop. So the people that will pay, people just go to the tax table and they say, oh, if it's above 800,000, it's 15%. That's not how the system works. The way it works, there's a distinction between what we call gross income and taxable income. So the salary that they pay you or they agree to pay you for your employment is called gross salary or gross income. What you have in the tax table is called taxable income. They're not the same. You take the gross income and you start by making statutory deductions, pension contribution, National Housing Fund, National Health Insurance Scheme, if you have an insurance policy on your life and your spouse, and mortgage interest. When you're done with that, you also take out rent relief allowance up to 500,000. It is the balance after that process that is called taxable income. The first 800,000 is also 0%. So what we are saying is this: a low-income earner or an average person, middle class, who is earning 1.5, 1.8 million per month, will see a drop in their PAYE from January next year. We've done a calculator just because of this misinformation was all over the place. If anybody is interested, they can go to fiscalreforms.ng. Fiscal is FISCAL, reforms.ng. They will find a tax calculator there, put in their numbers. It will tell you the tax you pay currently. It will tell you the tax you pay under the new law, and it shows you the comparison whether you are paying more or less. Only the top 2% of earners in Nigeria will pay more, and even that more is marginal for the majority of them. Before you get to 25% tax rate in Nigeria, you need to be earning a billion naira a year. And I say this with all seriousness. Even when you earn 200 million naira a year, you don't hit the 25%. So all of these, and the people that even pay a little bit more, are mostly top executives or business owners. Guess what? If they are paying 1 million naira more in personal tax, their businesses is getting 10 million naira more under this new reform, which means even for the high net worth individuals, this is a win for everyone. I do not see any stakeholder that is worse off under this reform than the current system.
All right, Ms. Oyedele, maybe I'll also, in a lighter note, tell you to welcome to the world of politics. Politics of taxation is what you're dealing with. So the more you explain, the more you need to keep explaining. But a little scenario for you to help out here. Let's give an example. Baba Bayo in, say, Shisha, in Surulere, is a vulcanizer. He earns, say, 10,000 naira. Let's just average that, 10,000 naira daily. It's just for hypothetical reasons. And he works 6 days a week. That comes to about 60,000. So if you do that by a month, we're talking about 240,000. If you do that by a monthly, yes, 240,000. So if you do that annually, you're ranging around 2.8 million. So Baba Bayo doesn't have, that his business is not registered, but he has a bank account that he puts his money through whenever he's being paid. 2.8 million comes to his account, even if he started with just 10,000 naira daily for 6 days. What does the taxman see in his account? What would the taxman do with that kind of money that passes through his account?
Yeah, God bless you, Jeffrey, for this question. I'm so glad you asked and the way you analyzed it. So for Baba Bayo, what that will mean is at the end of the year, remember that amount that Baba Bayo is making is not money that is not his money. You know, I don't know how to put it. That is the revenue from his business. This Baba Bayo will buy different things. Will pay for diesel to make sure that the vulcanizing machine is working. He will pay for the staff trying to carry the whatever it is they used to pump it around. He's probably paying something for even using the space where he's doing the vulcanizing work. So there's a draft regulation we have worked on with the Joint Revenue Board. It's called presumptive tax. In fact, the threshold we're working with is anybody earning up to like 40,000 naira a day from their business. So this is not salary. That the amount of profit that they make is so small, they shouldn't have to pay tax at all. So our plan is for those people to be completely exempted. So like Baba Bayo in your instance, we not pay tax from next year if we succeed with all of this reform. Because Baba Bayo's margin is so small, if he was in the private sector working as an employee, he will be exempted. Why do we punish people who are trying to then create jobs? Or they're just hustling? So under that presumptive tax, in fact, we even identify some businesses where we want government to give them tax exemption stickers. Like somebody is roasting corn by the roadside, they can never make enough money to pay tax. Vulcanizer, how can they make enough money to pay tax? Cart pushers. So there's some businesses that if you have customers 24 hours a day and you're magically not able to sleep and continue to function, you'll still be a poor person. We don't want to leave that judgment as to whether they pay tax or not to the ordinary officer that can, you know, decide to make a different decision. We want to protect them. That's what this reform is all about. So the fact that that money is in the account of Baba Bayo, nobody, and that's why the threshold for even reporting under this new reform, threshold for reporting is 25 million naira a quarter. That means you need to have like 100 million moving around in your account before the taxman will even take an interest. Under the current law, there's no threshold. They can ask anybody to report anything. So again, Baba Bayo is safe, and so is everyone else. Even if you have a billion naira in that your bank account, and they report it to the taxman, nobody can debit your account. At best, they'll say you have 1 billion in your account. We have not seen your tax returns. Please, can you explain, is it like a loan or a gift? And then you explain yourself. If your explanation doesn't look tenable and there's no evidence, taxman will say, I take it that because there's 1 billion flowing through your account, we think is your income, and your tax is 50 million naira. You still have 30 days to object to that assessment to say, I'm not going to pay 30 million. Then that back and forth continues until the taxman says, I refuse to amend. And then that gives you the opportunity now to appeal. You go to tax appeal tribunal, you go to the High Court, you go to Court of Appeal, you go to the Supreme Court. So obviously, you know that this power is not what the taxman will use for when there's 1 million tax to collect, because the process will not justify it. And even when there's a lot of money to collect, there's a due process in the law to be followed. And if anybody is trying to harass you, good news. Under the new tax reform law, there's a tax ombud to protect you. That we do not have today.
Mr. Oyedele, this has shed a lot of light on the issues, but I must say that this conversation continues naturally. As much as we wish you happy holidays, We might call you anytime, but we appreciate that you always answer. And just to reiterate, for those who want to calculate just how much tax they will be paying or they were paying, you go to that website, fiscalreforms.ng. You see the hamburger menu, which is like 3 horizontal lines. When you click on it, you go to implementation. You see implementation. When you scroll down, you'll see that calculator right there, and you can use the calculator to find out. So, Baba Bayo, Mama Comforts, Ogene, Abdullahi, please let's go there and find out, and of course follow this conversation and investigations. Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, thank you for your time. Chairman, Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much.
Well, let's switch gears now and talk politics, Osun State politics, national politics in the Accord. Bukola.
Yes, indeed. And a factional chairman of the Accord Party, Professor Chris Imumolen, joins us now virtually. Professor Imumolen is also the presidential candidate of the Accord Party in the 2023 presidential elections. Professor Imumolen, thank you for joining us on the program.
Yeah, thank you for having me today.
And so help us understand your party's position as far as the emergence of Governor Adeleke is concerned as the candidate of the Accord Party in the next general election, before we proceed with what will be a follow-up.
Okay, clearly we are making these submissions to the public and Osun people that Accord Party, under my leadership as the national chairman, has its candidate, Clement Kolawole, as a gubernatorial candidate, not the Governor Adeleke, because he had emerged through a process that we know, not that we feel, we know is not the recognized process, the legal process, because the faction that claims to have brought him into the party is not the faction or is not the people in charge of the party. So as it is today, Accord has a gubernatorial candidate, which is Clement Kolawole. And this is because, you know, we are in a country where we've seen a lot of things happen in Nigeria politics. And ordinarily, like for example, when the Anambra election came up, we were trying to see how we could harmonize the party, how we could make sure that we do not wash our linen in public, but we are not able to achieve that. And we also have the Osun election. We needed to ensure that we save the party. So once we got the feedback that the governor was moving to Accord, we tried our possible best to make sure that he understands the challenge in the party. And but that was not resolved before he had his primary with the Maxwell faction, and to save the party in a way to making sure that Accord feed a candidate that will not have challenge, a candidate after winning can maintain his position and his seat without so much or no legal challenges. We have to take we have to stand up to the occasion of conducting a primaries and producing the candidate Clement Kolawole for Osun people and for the party.
And so, Mr. Clement Kolawole emerged as candidate of the Accord Party about a week ago, right after the emergence of Governor Adeleke as a candidate of the Accord Party. Is this an afterthought or what? And where was your faction of the party prior to this time? Why didn't we hear about your contention of the national chairmanship position up until this time?
And we have been up there. We have been making our claims. We've been to court, and we've been doing all we can. But remember, I was the presidential candidate of the party. So, and Accord Party is one family, though there were issues, but we tried to make it very quiet within ourselves. I'm not in Accord Party to cause challenge, to cause problem, but to see how we can resolve and get the party right. As a matter of fact, I came into the race for chairmanship because the chairmen of the party thought it wise that I haven't contested under the party, the love they saw, the welfare they had during my time as a presidential candidate of the party, they've never experienced it in the history of the party. So they, about 27 state chairman, came up to me after, we've written about this, after the caretaker committee was formed, which was headed by Mr. Maxwell, who today is claiming to be the factional chairman. A caretaker committee was set up, that is after Honorable Lalado's tenure was over. He also headed the caretaker committee for several years. He tried his best. And the caretaker committee set up for Maxwell was given a mandate for 6 months to ensure that a new national leaders were set up and they do their due diligence, ensure that they hand over to them. The national convention was done last year, July. I contested. He also contested for the position of national chairman. I won the election clearly with 500 plus delegates, although there was a lot of shenanigans, a lot of mix-up during the convention, and I was declared the winner. But surprising, after the convention, we noticed that the party noticed that the Accord Party noticed that the Maxwell faction, who had lost the convention, who were in the caretaker committee, still insists that they were in charge of the party. It was on that note that I approached the court for clarity, not because I was not the chairman. I was already, from that point, the chairman. But because we had two factions at that time, and I just needed, I don't want issues, I don't want trouble, I don't want people to see Accord Party, the Nigerian people to see Accord Party as an unserious party. So quietly we went to the court, and we had that, yes, from the court, asking INEC to recognize me as the national chairman. What I did was just clarity, not because I wanted the court only to announce me as I was already the national chairman even before proceeding to the court by the virtue of the convention I held. So that is where we are.
Because of time, and it's interesting because people will say that you say you're not here to cause problem, but they see you as a troublemaker already in the Accord Party, given the fact that we did not hear anything about you, perhaps, apart from your running for the presidential election. Now that the party has gotten a bit of stature, then everybody started springing up. So I'm looking at INEC's website. Accord Party, national chairman, not by court, not a caretaker committee, nothing of, just outright, Barrister Maxwell Mbudem, national secretary Adebukola Abiola Ajaja, national secretary, and all of that. So INEC clearly recognizes Maxwell as the national chairman of your party. No court order, no caretaker committee, because if it is, they will identify it, or just to show that, okay, this is how the person became the chairman of the party. As a matter of fact, during the primaries that produced Ademola Adeleke, who is the incumbent governor of Osun State, INEC was present. INEC, when your group decided to do your primaries, we understand that INEC said they are not aware of any of such. So where exactly is all of this going to, as far as the Accord Party is concerned? If INEC doesn't recognize you on their website or come to your primaries, what exactly are you left with?
In Nigeria today, this is not the first time INEC will recognize a party that is not legally present, that does not have a legal backing. This is not the first time. We've seen it many times happen. That is not our challenge. Our challenge is that we went to court after the national convention, and we have an order that mandate INEC to recognize us. That is before this particular dispensation, and we know what happened in INEC. We are still pursuing it with them. What we've seen this happen. We've seen cases in Bayelsa, we've seen cases in Imo, similar to what is happening in Accord. It is because we don't want this to happen where a party in Zamfara, where a party will totally lose out, because they previously will have a legal issue that was unsettled. They go into election with it, and at the end of the day, the party will lose out. I'm not causing trouble. I'm saving the party.
Mr. Mamolen, if I may comment, just a moment. If the governor had not moved to a court party, would you have been fighting this battle you're fighting today?
I've been fighting this battle before now. I went to court. That is a sign of fight. We've had issues in the party secretariat where we went there, and we've had our issue. What I'm saying is that we just kept it quiet because in a party, sometimes we don't want members of the public to know about our internal issue. We've been having this fight. If you check many publications, I've attended a lot of interviews to talk about this. Yes, so whether Governor Adeleke come or not, we are in charge of the party, and we are doing what we are doing today to save the face of the party and to making sure that whatever happens after now, the party remains in power and remains intact.
So
it's not about Governor Adeleke coming, it's about we doing the right thing.
Right. So as politicians always say on the final note, when things like this happen and there's a meeting, they will say, what do you want?
What I want is, I'm the national chairman of the party. I'm stamping my position as national chairman of the party. I would not relent to do what is right for the party. Yes, that is what I want, to do what is right for our court party and to making sure that our court party prepare itself for the future. That is what we want, and that is what we are doing.
Official, what you want. But, I mean, what kind of compromise do you want? Do you want something to be ceded to you? Because as has been said, officially on INEC's website, your name is not there. So what you're laying claims to, even the law does not support it, at least the body that has been backed by the Constitution to oversee party affairs. They do not recognize you based on that publication. So it looks like, as has been said time and again, that there's something more at play here. And I wonder if you'll be willing to have a sit-down with the governor and some other supporters of his and maybe have come to a compromise. Is that something you're willing to do?
Let me tell you something. There are individuals in INEC. INEC as a body, well, I respect them, but there are individuals working. We know our country, we know Nigeria. There are individuals in INEC which we know that are compromising. There's a court order that mandates INEC. See, if INEC does not recognize us, the law recognizes us. That is what is important to us. And we are going to pursue the case to the later. We have a law in Nigeria. We've seen INEC is a regulatory body for party. We've seen this happen in the past, my brother, where INEC will refuse to recognize a part that, and because these people have been in the party for 13 years, 16 years, they have the framework, they know the people, they know how to make themselves, they know how to do all these things. But we would not perturb, we will not relent in this matter. So what I'm saying is this, we just want to save the face of our party, we want the right thing to be done. See, I'm not down for negotiation. I'm not down for saying, oh, this is what I want, give me this. No, I'm not that kind of politician. I just want the right thing to be done in the party, and I want Accord to be stabilized. I want Accord to have the right candidate for the Osun election, and I want Accord to win the Osun election with Clement Kolawole, which I believe is very possible.
Professor Mumolen, you were suspended, very quickly, you were suspended from the party, expelled rather, in November 2021. Even according to the Osun State chairman of a court party, you were expelled in January 2025. But this report I have here says you were expelled in November 2024 for anti-party activities. Please speak to your purported expulsion from the Accord Party.
No, see, what they have done is contempt. A case cannot be in court and a particular faction. That is why I said I am in for peace. Because what I would have done is also to expel them and cause problem. A case is in court and a faction is expelling another. It's contempt. So it is irrelevant. It is null and void. We all know that. So this case has been brought to court since September. The court has given an order in October 2024. And January, the case is still pending final determination. In January, a particular faction suspend the other faction. We've seen this happen in Nigeria. It's politics. It's invalid. It's null and void. It doesn't hold any water. We should have reciprocated by doing the same and causing, but we want peace. We've extended our hands. We've asked them to come. Let's work together. It's not a do or die affair. If we truly want to grow our party, we should not. Why would you suspend people because you feel your faction is losing grip. That is not it. So that matter, we don't even talk about it because it does not hold any water. Please.
All right. We hope if the governor and candidate of the Accord Party calls all parties to the table, that this will be resolved even in your favor. But we must anchor at this point, and thank you for coming on the program and providing your own account as far as the dispute is concerned. Professor Chris Imumolen is a disputed chairman of Accord Party, national chairman of the Accord Party, and of course, presidential candidate of the party in 2023 election. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me. God bless you.
We'll take a moment now. When we return, it will be time to have a very important conversation on the concerns and controversy surrounding the police's planned implementation of the tinted glass permit. Of course, there's an update on that particular development. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. So let's switch gears now to this issue of tinted glass permit enforcement by the Nigerian police force. Now, Mr. Popo Martins are taking them to court, and the court has said everybody should maintain status quo. But that has generated loads of controversy, multiple interpretation to these court orders. In fact, from Mr. Hundein, who is the first PRA, had said that, look, as a law-abiding force or institution, they will respect the law, but nothing in the court judgment, the court's order stops the police necessarily from doing their work. There's out of respect and all of that. We'll get all of this detail. Whether police wants to go on with the enforcement of the tinted glass permit, that the NBA is actually waiting against the police that you cannot do this. But let's bring in the legal practitioner, Mr. Ademola Adeleye. He joins us from Abuja studio. Mr. Adeleye, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
So I think a direct question will be, is the police disobeying a court order? The reason I'm asking as we speak is that we understand that Mr. Popo Martins has filed a contempt proceeding against the police.
With respect to the contempt proceeding, I am not aware of, I read it on the pages of the social media, the way every Nigerian's read it, and I'm the lawyer personally handling that matter for the Nigerian Police Force and the Inspector General of Police. But let me take you to the fact. There is a lot of controversy with respect to this order of court made on 3rd of October 2025. In fact, let me give you a background before I talk about that order. On 2nd of September 2025, the Incorporated Trustees of the Nigerian Bar Association sued in representative capacity for itself, for Nigerian legal practitioners, and for the motoring public with respect to this tinted glass permit policy of the Nigerian Police Force, claiming that that policy is being anchored on a decree. Unfortunately, every Nigerian can go online, Google this law. That even from all the public documents issued, interviews, documents issued by the Nigerian Police Force, this policy is being anchored on the Motor Vehicles Prohibition of Tinted Glasses Act. You will find it in Chapter M21 of the Laws of the Federation 2004. It's just a 6-section law. And if you look at that law specifically prohibits the use of tinted glasses in Nigeria. Either you call it tinted, either you call it treated, either you call it colored glasses. In other jurisdictions, there are levels or degrees to allowance of the use of treated glasses or tinted glasses. But in Nigeria, this law specifically prohibits it. However, the law also gives a leeway that if you want to use it, it must be for good cause. And that law specifies what good cause means, either for health purpose or for security reasons. And you must apply to the appropriate authority, which is the Inspector General of Police, or any officer appointed by the Inspector General of Police, or authority given to any person by the Inspector General of Police, for you to use tinted glasses in Nigeria. In fact, that law even specifically states that if you import a vehicle with tinted glass into the country, within 14 days of that importation, you must change it. However, let's even go back. 2nd of September 2025, the Nigerian Bar Association filed a suit before the Federal High Court in Abuja. It was filed by Mr. Olukunle Edun SAN. They approached the court for ex parte order for interim injunctions against the Nigerian police force to stop that policy. The court refused them. The same Mr. Olukunle Edun SAN now went to another jurisdiction of the court in Warri, filed for Mr. John Aikoko Martins another suit, exactly a month after they filed the Abuja suit, on 2nd of October. That was on 2nd of October 2025. Then on 3rd October 2025, they approached the court by way of ex parte without hearing the other parties. They took 4 prayers to the court, 3 for interim injunction, and the 4th one is for an order of the court to serve the Inspector General of Police and the Nigerian Police Force through substituted means. If you look at that order, the court specifically refused prayer 1, 2, and 3, which is the one for interim injunction against the Nigerian Police Force and the Inspector General of Police. With respect to this policy, the court only granted them the order to serve the IG and the Nigerian Police Force through substituted means. However, the court now said parties should maintain status quo pending the hearing and determination of the motion on notice, which is for interlocutory injunction. As of that 3rd October 2025, enforcement of this policy had commenced. And if you look at the press releases from the Nigerian Police Force, you realize that this policy had been advertised. There are a lot of notices about the commencement of the policy in this media space from early in the year, and the enforcement of that policy had commenced as of that 3rd of October when they approached the court in Warri. It is unfortunate. Recently, I just even learned that the same Mr. Kunle Edun had now gone ahead to another high court in Delta State, that is Orerope Judicial Division. I read about it in the media like every other Nigerian too, and I'm aware that they are yet to even serve the Nigerian Police Force with the order of interim injunction they alleged to have gotten last week, Wednesday. And if you listen, even to the interview granted by Mr. John Aikoko, he specifically even admitted that it is the Federal High Court that has jurisdiction on this subject.
Mr.
So
Delaya,
Nigerians should then guess, why are they using dilatory means with respect to issues that affect national security and public safety?
I think the bone of contention here, which for a lot of people is quite clear, is the number 6 on that order that says an order is made for parties to maintain status quo pending the hearing and determination of the motion on notice. The case clearly is against the tinted glass permit, the enforcement. So your own definition of status quo makes it look like the court was just making an academic exercise kind of pronouncement. So why is the court saying maintain status quo then, if it is referring to, oh, continue what you're doing? The interpretation is maintain status quo means what was before this case was instituted.
And what I was also saying that I'm making clear to Nigerians is that they filed that case on 2nd of October. What was the status of the enforcement as of 2nd of October? The status was the enforcement had commenced. In fact, let me even now take you to another information that Nigerians may not have. On 6th October, after the court in Warri refused their interim injunction specifically. If you look at Order 8 of that same order, you will see that the court specifically said prayers 1, 2, 3 are hereby refused, which are the specific prayers for interim injunction against the continuation of that policy. On 6th October, the Nigerian Bar Association President, Mazi Alfa Mosigwe, SAN, led some reputable members of the NBA to meet the Inspector General of Police. I was at that meeting as an external solicitor to the NBA, and Chief Ayotunde Ogunleye, SAN, was also at the meeting because Chief Ogunleye is the one representing the police in the matter before the Federal Court in Abuja. And it took our intervention to prevail on the leadership of the NBA, of the Nigerian police force, not because there is an order restraining them from continuing with the enforcement of that policy, but because of our commitment and also the position of the Nigerian police force as a corporate responsible organization, saying that because these matters are in court, we are going to pause the continuation of the enforcement. However, Nigerians should continue to comply with respect to the issue of registration for the use of tinted glass permit in Nigeria. Not because there is any specific order restraining them from the continuation of the enforcement. The enforcement had even commenced even before the suit was filed in Warri.
Right. So, as has been said, the Federal High Court sitting in Warri Delta State has been urged to commit the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Kayode Egbetokun, the Force Public Relations Officer, Benjamin Ondain, and the Assistant Inspector General of Police in charge of legal services, AIG Emmanuel Aino, to prison for alleged contempt of court. If you admit that this is still a matter in court and it's important to respect the court process, why will the police then say, okay, we're pausing now, but you know what, we're not even pausing anymore. January the 2nd, we're starting off, when there's still a case in court?
I read on Friday the press release by the police PPRO, and from the press release you will see that despite the pause of that enforcement, in this very moment, the enforcement had not even commenced. So what are you committing the IG to prison for? What are you? Which order of committal are you then asking the court for? The commencement had not commenced. The publication that was made was to encourage Nigerians to continue to voluntarily comply with registration for the use of tinted glass permit in Nigeria. And like I said, it is safe to say that by the provisions of the Motor Vehicles Prohibition of Tinted Glass Act in Nigeria, the use of tinted glass permit in Nigeria is outrightly prohibited, save for permission granted by the Inspector General of Police. I'm sure when that process is served on the Inspector General of Police and the other alleged contemnors in that suit will adequately address that. And it is unfortunate, the matter in Warri came up on 8th of December. When the court adjourned it in October, it was specifically for hearing of our notice of preliminary objection to that suit and other pending application. But surprisingly, even the Mr. John Aikoko Martins and his counsel failed to respond to our processes. Rather, they filed a notice of preliminary objection to respond to a notice of preliminary objection which we filed, saying that the police does not have the right to engage lawyers of their choice to handle the matter for them, saying that the court should discountenance all processes filed by the police and the court should give them judgment. Even on 8th of December, they came to court to seek adjournment again, and the court adjourned the matter to 26th of March. But like Mr. CSP Ondain said in the press release issued by the police last week Friday, I am sure that the purport of the earlier press releases by the Nigerian police force was to encourage Nigerians to continue to voluntarily comply with registration of their tinted glass permit. So not mainly to continue with the enforcement.
Just to be clear, the case, just as we wind down, was filed on October the 2nd, right? So that's when the enforcement began, right? So it's not third.
Not at all. The enforcement had begun before 2nd. At the time they were in court,
when did the enforcement begin?
From the press releases,
it was postponed to the 2nd. It was postponed to the 2nd of October.
Immediately after, yes,
it was first for June, but it was postponed to October 2nd. Exactly. And that was when the case was filed. So status quo would be before. Anyway, we have to anchor this.
At the time they were in court, enforcement had officially begun.
Mr. Dele, I think we need to sort out.
Court sitting starts at 9 a.m.
Mr. Dele,
enforcement had begun.
Mr. Dele,
in fact, the order was not even served.
Right. We have to anchor.
In fact, the orders were not served until days after.
All right, Mr. Dele, apparently we need to sort out these dates and this argument, because the argument is everybody's trying to navigate around what status quo is. So perhaps that's why we're arguing here. Ademola Adele is a legal practitioner joining us from Abuja studios. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll take a break and we'll come back. We'll switch gears to some controversy around the landed property in Abuja, in contention between an individual and the Enugu State government. We'll bring you the details when we come back after this break. Stay with us.
Get into a very contentious matter. We had part A of a conversation on the program last week, and we had a legal practitioner who came to speak about, yet again, well, I say discrepancies in orders from the authorities at the FCT court and all of that regarding a land, this particular property right here. So today on the show we have a part B of the conversation, and we're joined by Mr. Libros Oshoma, a lawyer who's going to be providing the side of the Enugu State government. Good morning, Mr. Libros. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Coyote.
So the issue is quite simple. However, things that appear simple are usually the most complicated. This company, represented by the legal practitioner, says, you know what, we got allocation and we got the right documents for this property a long time ago. And along comes the Enugu State government saying that they have a new document saying that it is theirs. I'm paraphrasing what he said.
Yeah.
Those are not my words. I'm presenting the background. In fact, there's a High Court of Federal Capital Territory judgment of May the 12th, 2016, presided over by Honorable Justice Musa. I think it was initiated by the Enugu State government, from what we hear, and the Enugu State House and Development Corporation. And it was held that the plaintiffs had no interest whatsoever in that particular 804 Wuye district property, subject matter of the suit for lack of locus standi, and the duly enrolled out of a court is attached, blah, blah, blah. So that is the position of a legal practitioner, saying that we have the right documents.
So the question is, originally, because we'll talk about root of title, originally, who was that land allocated to? The land was, in 1992, Enugu State government applied for the allocation of that land. But in 1993, you remember at this time we had military government. So the land, rather than allocation to Enugu State government, it was allocated to Enugu State Property Development Corporation instead of Enugu State Housing Development Corporation. And so there's a discrepancy. And so, since there is no entity known as Enugu State Property Development Corporation, Enugu State applied for variation. And so, the judgment you're talking about, I will come to that and address it. So, you now have a non-existent entity in Enugu State property development. And then you come...
Will I say whose fault? Who's doing it?
It was the FCT's fault.
So who applied for it?
Enugu State government applied for a land.
So a clerk now said, I'm not going to put Enugu State government. I'm going to put...
because at that time...
what exactly happened?
At that time, what you have a lot of... Most states had property development corporation. So the presumption by the FCT then was, Enugu State owns was unique. It was housing development corporation and not property development corporation. In Bende State, Benin was Property Development Corporation, BDPA. So, but for Enugu, it was Housing Development Corporation. So the presumption by the FCT, for reason best known to them, was that maybe it is property development, and it was allocated in that name. So this company now comes and says that they got a power of attorney from Enugu State Property Development Corporation, a non-existent entity. Can a non-existent entity sell a land to you? Then the next question is, the court says, since Enugu State Property Development Corporation does not exist, Enugu State does not have locus. So if you say it does not exist, then who now sold the land to the man who is saying, look, the land belongs to me? Do you understand? So that means there is a fraud somewhere. And so when people say, because I listened to him, he said the IG had said police should not be involved in landed matters. But not when there is a fraud. EFCC investigated this matter, the police investigated this matter and discovered that there were fraud perpetrated, and the documents that were submitted to the court were also fraudulent documents. And it is a notorious fact, even for a year one student, law student, that you cannot place something on nothing and expect it to stand. So if you use fraudulent documents to obtain judgment from the court, that same court, not even on appeal, can vacate that order.
So before, okay, Bukola, go ahead, please.
Hold on, sir. You just initially acknowledged that the land was initially allocated to a certain Enugu property development company.
Non-existent.
Housing, not property.
Property development, non-existent. So who now transferred the land?
No, but there was an initial allocation.
To a non-existent entity.
By the FCDA. By the FCDA. Authority in which
exactly.
year?
So that was in 1993.
1993.
So this company now is saying that I got a power of attorney from this non-existent entity, not signed by any known state government officials. And now, what do you call it? Suspiciously, the man who received that certificate by virtue of EFCC's investigation, late Senator Ayogweze, who, by his testimony in EFCC, that this land belonged to the state government, I received his certificate and I handed over to the then administrator. Unfortunately today, this non-existent company, or this so-called company, Simeonis, is now, they've changed directors, and some of his sons are now directors in that company. That company, and then funny enough, the company was registered immediately that land was allocated. Do you see the nexus here? Now that company was registered in 1993. Immediately the land was allocated. So that means ab initio, there was a fraud using the Enugu State government name. Because at that time, you know, you just, what do you call it, the FCT didn't have ages. El-Rufai, you know, when he came, he found out that there were a lot of irregular allocation, and a lot of them were revoked. So, but for this one, what the state government simply did was to apply back to say, look, what you gave to us, you didn't give in a proper name. It's like Kayode applying for a land, and rather than give to you, then they included a name that was not yours. And the court will certainly say...
So who committed this fraud?
The people who are parading themselves as owners of the land now knew ab initio what they were doing, because you cannot, like I said, you cannot say a non-existent entity sold the land to you. Even a human being who is alive, the moment you are diseased, nobody can assign your land except there is a letter of administration. Not to talk of a non-existent agency by a state government, and the state government said, well, since we don't have such agency, please can you correct this? And the government had taken step now to say, okay, what we'll do, we revoke what we gave you before and reassign. What they just simply did was to reassign. And you say, no, you can't do that. That we already had a document. You already sold to us. Who sold to you? That's the big question. The land was not originally allocated to Simeonis. The land, they agreed that the land was allocated to Enugu State government. But that Enugu State government gave them power of attorney. In whose authority? In whose name? And then you refer to the court judgment. The court judgment said, Enugu State government, since this name is non-existent.
The court seemed to be agreeing with whatever is being presented to them from that judge, from the...
That's why I'm telling you that, you see, sometimes this is why people gradually, unfortunately, with due respect to, these fantastic judges that we have in Nigeria, unfortunately, these are some of the reasons why people are gradually losing hope in the judiciary. You say somebody that this land you're claiming that you are a non-existent person. But at the same time, that non-existent person, you said it was okay to have sold the land to somebody else. You are blowing hot and cold from the same mouth, like we say in law. It's a very simple thing. You say, I applied for a land, Liboroso Shoma, and then you now allocated the land in the name of Liborosi Modu. And then I said, look, my name is not Liborosi Modu, it's Liboroso Shoma.
Mr. Shoma, are you implying that it is the FCD authority in cahoots with some people that committed the fraud? We need to understand who allegedly committed the fraud you're talking about.
What I'm saying, what I'm implying is that because if they committed the fraud, they wouldn't have corrected the defect. That land in 1992, in 1992, we didn't have all of these computer allocations that we have today now. In 1992, most of these processes were manual. The land was applied for by Enugu State government in 1992. Allocation was given in 1993. And then sometimes in 2000, was it 2002 or so, they said that the land was, they got a power of attorney, an irrevocable power of attorney. By who? For a non-existent entity? Liboroso Shoma is the one that is alive. Okay, Evan and Evans were. Let me just take us back to that time.
So the layman will argue to the fact that when payments were made, at what point did Enugu State, whether they got the name right or wrong, at what point did Enugu State government make a payment?
Also, another thing was that the 1992, I'm talking about as far back as 1992. So the next question is, when this matter was investigated by the police, the company, the Simeonis, the reports are there. The police said that the directors are non-existent. You remember, before now, people will set up fictitious companies to even collect loans from the bank.
No, where I'm going to... Sorry, Mike.
Let me explain this. Okay. So the directors of those companies will be fictitious names. And that's why the Corporate Affairs Commission insisted now that if you are registering a company, there must be a proof of ID. Before, they would just put names, address non-existent. So what happened with that company at that time, the police said they couldn't even locate anybody with those names. It is now that they just changed those names.
All right, so Mr. Shoma, pointedly now, in 2016, did the court strike out that case, which was instituted by the Enugu State government and the Enugu State Housing Development Corporation? Did the court strike the case out for lack of locus standi?
That's what I'm saying. I agree with you completely.
So it was struck out?
Yes, because...
Good. So the second question is, the court, in fact, held that they had no interest whatsoever in the plot 807 Weir District, which is the subject matter of the suit. And it was struck out, Mr. Shoma. So what are you building this case on? If the court has said, you don't have locus standi, it was struck out.
Look, let me tell you, when you go to court in a wrong name, the court is saying this land is allocated to Enugu State Property Development.
So are you saying the court also is dealing with a non-existent entity?
That's what the court said. The court
was have done its own due process.
No, not.
And that's why I said we strike this out.
Not in all cases, because that's why I kept asking the question. When the court says the land is allocated to a non-existent person.
No, the court didn't say that.
That's the gravamen
of
the
court
order.
said you do not have locus.
What is locus? What is locus?
That you are not the. It didn't say the entity is non-existent. It said you do not have locus standi.
Who went to court? Who went to court?
It was the Enugu State government and the Housing Development Authority.
The Housing Development Authority, whose name was in the certificate of incorporation.
Mr. Shoma,
let's understand it. Whose name was in the certificates of occupancy.
You claim it was non-existent. The
That's
court
what I'm
here
telling
did not
you.
say it is non-existent.
When the court says you don't have a locus to bring this matter, you don't have a course of action, I'm telling you, because you are reading the order, you just read an order. There are facts that led to that order.
Okay.
And the facts leading to the order was because, as at that time, to date, there is no entity known as Enugu State Property Development Corporation. And so that's why the court said, the land belongs to Enugu State Property Development Corporation. Enugu State Housing Corporation cannot be claiming ownership.
Well, clearly this is a very contentious matter, Mr. Schumer, but we have to answer at this point. We have
the question now is, if the court said, as at that time, that this land you don't have locus, because the name
we have to run
then who now sold the land to you? Who gave you the power of attorney?
Mr. Liberal Schumer, thank you so much for your time. 3 days to Christmas, so let's ensure we have a fantastic Christmas. Thank you once again for your time.
Always.
Thank you.
Cool, this is where we draw the curtains on the show. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kayode Okikelu.
And I'm Jeffrey Uzama. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.